When we board a plane, most of us are looking for little more than a kind neighbor in the seat next to us and new in-flight entertainment. Passengers on subsequent flights, however, did not have the same luck, as things went from bad to worse. Stick around to find out some of the worst things that have ever happened on airplanes throughout history. And trust us, some of these will shock you. First up on the list is a very tragic plane disaster that took place in 1977 at Tenerife Airport. A series of tragic events resulted in one of the deadliest aviation tragedies in history, beginning with an explosion at Gran Canaria Airport in Spain. A number of planes, including the ill-fated KLM Flight 4805 and Pan Am Flight 1736, were diverted to Tenerife Airport as a result. The two Boeing 747s collided on the ground as a result of excessive fog, the lack of ground radar, and misunderstanding, killing all 583 passengers on board in both aircraft, with just 61 passengers from the Pan Am flight surviving. Next up, this horrible event took place on an American Airlines flight in the US. In a video that later went viral, a lady appears to be striking her boyfriend and swearing at him for looking at other women in a video posted on social media. After a conflict, both passengers were removed off the plane, according to American Airlines. According to various accounts, two passengers traveling together were embroiled in a dispute prior to the departure from the gate at Miami International Airport. After that, law enforcement was called, and both passengers were taken from the plane. We appreciate the swift action of the American team in resolving the matter. As a result of their actions, all of our passengers are safe. Up next, we have the Charkhi Dadri collision, 1996. Charkhi Dadri is a little town west of New Delhi that became famous after a calamity occurred in its sky. The mid-air collision between Saudi Arabian Airlines Flight 763 and Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907 is still the greatest aviation catastrophe in history. The incident happened while the Saudi flight was taking off from New Delhi and the Kazakhstan jet was preparing to land. The flight path collided due to the Kazakhstani pilot's poor English communication skills and the lack of secondary surveillance radar at Indira Gandhi International Airport, and the pilots were unable to avoid a collision. The accident claimed the lives of all 349 passengers on both aircraft. Now we have the Southwest Airlines disaster. Passengers on a Southwest Airlines aircraft to Dallas in April 2018 had to drag a woman back into the plane when she was ready to be sucked out the window. Something on the engine fell off during the flight and smashed into the window, shattering it. The rapid change in air pressure drew the woman into the glass pane, where she hung for a few minutes halfway outside the plane. Passengers were terrified and believed the jet would crash, but it landed safely. The woman, who was partially sucked out the window, unfortunately died as a result of her injuries. Next up, insane storm. A severe storm slammed the East Coast in March 2018, canceling nearly all flights into and out of the area's airports. However, one aircraft was not canceled, and the turbulence was so extreme that practically everyone on board vomited. Pretty much everyone in the plane vomited up, the pilot reported to the National Weather Service's Aviation Center. Even the pilots were on the edge of throwing up during the landing, they said. It's not one of the truly terrifying flight stories, but it's certainly unpleasant. Next on our list is American Airlines Flight 191 fatal crash, 1979. The American Airlines Flight 191 crash is still the deadliest airline catastrophe in U.S. history, and it also dragged the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 into disfavor. The jet's left wing engine parted from the plane barely minutes after takeoff, tumbling over the top of the wing. This resulted in considerable damage, as well as the severance of hydraulic fluid lines. The plane immediately went into a roll, flipped over, and crashed into a neighboring field. Investigations indicated that the catastrophe was caused by the aircraft crew's failure to follow proper maintenance protocols, resulting in the deaths of all 273 passengers on board, as well as 2 people on the ground. Now we have Air India Express Flight 812, 2010. The Air India Express Flight 812 crash is India's third deadliest aviation disaster. The plane was flying from Dubai to Mangalore. Mangalore Airport is one of only 3 in the country with tabletop runways, which means the runway's length is limited by mountainous terrain and a dramatic drop or canyon at one end. Landing needs a high level of precision and awareness. Unfortunately, the plane's pilot underestimated the landing and landed beyond the normal touchdown site, among other problems. As a result, the jet sped past the runway and crashed onto the cliff, disintegrating and catching fire. Only 8 people survived the tragedy, which claimed the lives of 158 people on board. Next up, a computer failure causes a huge scare. A pilot flying a Qantas flight from Singapore to Perth described how the plane's computer went insane before he was able to save everyone on board. The autopilot on the Airbus A330 failed not once, but twice, plummeting the plane 690 feet in 23 seconds, and then another 400 feet in 15 seconds. More than 100 passengers were hurt. It's the worst thing that can happen when you're in an airplane, when you don't have control, he explained. How scary would that be? Thankfully, everyone on board was okay. Next, vaping on board causes life lifelong ban. The New Orleans Times-Picayune and CNN reported that a 30-year-old man from St. Petersburg, Florida, vaped at his seat and exhaled into a bag during a Spirit Airlines flight. After being reprimanded by a flight attendant, he was observed going into the restroom. When the plane's smoke alarm went off, the pilot had to descend to turn it off. The man was not jailed, but it was later reported that he has been barred from flying with Spirit Airlines for the rest of his life. Now we have the Malaysian Airlines flight MH370, 2014. The strange disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 captured the attention and interest of many in 2014, when the plane inexplicably vanished on March 8, 2014. The airplane was on its route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing when contact with the air traffic control was lost without warning or indication of any problems. Despite extensive searches by many nations across the southern Indian Ocean, no sign of the aircraft was found until a flaperon was discovered on Reunion Island in July 2015, 3,700 kilometers from the main search site. The search activities were the most thorough and expensive ever, costing more than $500,000 in just a few months. Experts say the plane changed direction for unknown reasons and then flew until it ran out of fuel. The accident is thought to have claimed the lives of all 239 individuals on board. Now we have a hailstorm scares passengers. Passengers were scared when an American Airlines plane was hit by a hailstorm in June 2018, badly damaging the plane. The Airbus A319 was flying from San Antonio, Texas to Phoenix, Arizona when it was hit by a severe hailstorm, shattering the plane's glass and damaging the nose. The airliner was forced to divert to El Paso because of absolutely no forward visibility. As they hoped to land safely, passengers were crying, terrified, and vomiting. Next, Japan Airlines Flight 123, 1985. The crash of Japan Airlines Flight 123 is still the deadliest single-plane catastrophe in history. When the Boeing 747 crashed into rugged terrain near Mount Takamagahara, northwest of Tokyo, it was carrying 524 passengers, including crew. The flight was bound for Osaka and took off from Tokyo's Haneda Airport. The unexpected happened just 12 minutes into the flight. The plane experienced massive decompression. The rudder and hydraulic systems were disabled as a result, severely limiting the pilot's control of the aircraft. Despite this, the crew was able to keep the jet flying for another half an hour before it crashed into a ridge, killing all 520 passengers and leaving only 4 survivors. Now, we have snakes on a plane. Being confined on an airplane with a snake, if you're frightened of snakes, would be a nightmare. A snake hanged on from one of the aircraft's overhead storage bins on a 2016 Aeromexico flight leaving Mexico City. A passenger captured video of the snake appearing to tumble out of the bin area. The snake, which was assumed to be a poisonous green viper, landed in a dining area, prompting the pilot to organize an emergency landing where the creature was caught. Lastly, a very narrow miss on the runway. Finally, 2 passenger jets narrowly escaped crashing on the runway in July 2014. A Boeing 767 from Russian carrier Utair was coming in to land on the runway in Barcelona, while an Aerolíneas Argentinas Airbus A340 was leisurely taxiing across the runway, which was caught on camera. In order to avoid crashing, the Boeing was forced to lift back into the air. And there you have it, everything you need to know about some of the worst things that have ever happened on an airplane. Flying can sometimes be quite scary, but it's also important to remember that accidents involving planes are very rare and statistically extremely low. Make sure to let us know your thoughts down below. Which one of these stories surprised you the most? Did we forget any shocking ones? Let us know. But if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss any of our new and upcoming content. Thanks for watching.